So welcome to today's deep dive, everyone.
Hmm.
I want you to just imagine walking into a third grader's bedroom.
Oh boy. I think we all know where this is going.
Right. You know the scene.
Hmm.
It's a Saturday morning. The sun is shining. And like maybe 30 minutes ago, you asked them to do one incredibly simple thing.
Just one thing.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Just clean up their room so they can go outside to play. That's it. So you open the door expecting, I don't know, at least some progress.
Right, maybe a clear floor.
Yeah. But instead, you find them sitting in the middle of this colossal pile of Barbie dolls. They're deeply engrossed in a Boxcar Children paperback, and they are wearing only one sock.
Just the one sock. It's such a classic image.
It really is. And when you ask what they're doing, they look around at the mess, they become completely overwhelmed, and they just burst into tears, sobbing that their life is just too hard.
Which is so frustrating for the adults in the room.
Beyond frustrating. Because here's the kicker, right? This kid is a math genius. I mean, they are reading 3 grade levels ahead.
Right.
They can explain the entire solar system to you in terrifying detail. So why on earth can't they just pick up a sock?
It is, it's honestly one of the most maddening developmental paradoxes that a parent or an educator can ever face.
It really is.
We look at that brilliant child and we just think, you are so smart. Why are you acting like this?
Exactly. We have this deeply ingrained assumption, I think, that high intelligence just automatically equals high capability in every single area of life.
Right, a 1-to-1 ratio.
Yeah. You see a kid ace a complex math test. You just point and say, there it is. They've got it figured out. They're a smart kid. Therefore, they are a capable kid. We expect it to be this clean, linear mathematical equation.
And, well, it is a very comforting equation.
Oh, for sure.
We desperately want to believe that raw brain power translates seamlessly into everyday competence, organization, discipline, all of that.
Because if it doesn't, we're kind of lost.
Exactly. Because if it doesn't, we are left trying to navigate a behavioral landscape that feels completely illogical.
It feels baffling. And honestly, it drives so many of us absolutely up the wall.
Absolutely.
So if you are listening to this right now, whether you are a parent pulling your hair out on a Saturday morning, or maybe an educator trying to reach a brilliant but completely scattered student, or honestly just someone fascinated by why human beings do the things they do, you are in the right place.
We're going to get to the bottom of it.
We really are. Our mission for this deep dive today is to completely tear down that broken mathematical equation. We are going to explore why incredibly smart, capable children struggle with seemingly simple daily tasks.
And it's so important that we do.
Yeah, and more importantly, we are going to look at how understanding something called executive skills can totally revolutionize how we guide them.
It really requires a fundamental shift in perspective.
How so?
Well, we have to stop viewing these everyday failures as character flaws or, intentional defiance, and we have to start looking at them as specific mechanical breakdowns in the brain.
Mechanical breakdowns. I love that phrasing. And to do this, our deep dive today is based entirely on the phenomenal, groundbreaking book called Smart But Scattered. It's by Peg Dawson, ADD, and Richard Guare, PhD.
It's an incredible resource.
It really is. This material is going to completely reframe how you view intelligence, behavior, and maybe even your own adult habits by the end of this. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
What exactly is happening on a neurological level when a brilliant kid just can't seem to get it together?
So to understand that, we have to separate raw intelligence from the brain's actual management system.
Okay.
And this is where most of us get tripped up. We assume that if a child can comprehend fractions or, build a massive Lego set without instructions, they should logically be able to remember to put their homework in their backpack.
Right. It seems like the homework thing should be way easier than the fractions.
You would think.
Yeah.
But neuroscience tells us that those two actions, solving the math problem and remembering it to turn it in, they require entirely different neurological toolkits.
Let's ground this in a real example from the source material, because
Yeah.
I think it helps to visualize it.
Mm-hmm.
We need to talk about Katie.
Ah, yes, Katie's story.
So Katie is 8 years old.
Yeah.
And by all academic metrics, she is an absolute rock star. She's in the 90th percentile for achievement.
So very, very bright.
Extremely. She's a math whiz. She has a vocabulary that just blows her teachers away, and she's highly imaginative. But here is the setup. Saturday morning, and her mom tells her she has to clean her room before she can go across the street to play.
Which is a completely standard classic childhood expectation. Nothing crazy there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Katie goes upstairs. She stands in the doorway, and she just surveys the absolute chaos. I mean, There are Barbie dolls piled up in the corner, books are spilling off the shelves, and clothes are literally burying her board games.
Just a disaster zone.
The total disaster. So she sighs, she walks over to the dolls, and she puts a couple of them on the shelf. But then, she picks one up. Yeah. She inspects the outfit. She decides she doesn't really like the dress for this imaginary prom she was suddenly thinking about. And out of nowhere, she starts digging through the toy bin for a new miniature dress.
And right there, in a matter of seconds, the original goal of cleaning the room is completely lost.
Just poof, gone.
Yeah, it is completely evaporated from her working memory.
Completely gone. So her mom pops in half an hour later, and Katie hasn't actually done anything productive.
Of course not.
Right. So the mom, trying really hard to be patient, helps her finish putting the dolls away. And then she tells Katie to move on to the books.
Okay, a new clear instruction.
Right. So Katie goes over to the books, but she spots a boxcar children book she had been in the middle of reading. And she just sits down on the floor and starts reading it.
She just checks out of the cleaning task entirely.
Entirely. And when she finishes the chapter, she looks up at the room, realizes it's still a huge disaster, gets totally overwhelmed, and just breaks down in tears crying, "Mom, this is way too much work. Can I just go play and finish this later?"
What's fascinating here is that if you look closely at Katie's life, her teachers are reporting the exact same paradox at school.
Really? Like the same behavior?
The exact same. She is incredibly smart, but she's labeled as disruptive.
Oh, wow. Why disruptive?
Well, because she can't stay on task during group activities or, she's fiddling with her shoelaces during quiet reading time, the immediate temptation for the adults in her life is to say she's being defiant.
Right, like she's doing it on purpose.
Exactly. Or that she's lazy. Or that she lacks discipline and just doesn't want to do the work.
Because that's exactly how it feels to the adult. It feels like she is actively choosing to ignore the instructions. But the authors of the book argue that this isn't a choice at all, is it?
No, not at all. The science tells us she actually lacks something very specific. She lacks executive skills.
Now, we really need to pause and clarify that term right away. Because I'll be honest, when I first hear the phrase executive skills, I instantly picture, like, a guy in a tailored suit, sitting in a glass boardroom, doing strategic planning for a Fortune 500 company.
It does sound a bit like a corporate management seminar, doesn't it?
It totally does.
But the term actually comes directly from neuroscience. It refers to the brain-based skills required to literally execute tasks.
Execute, right.
Yeah. These are the cognitive processes that allow us to plan, direct our activities, regulate our behavior, and ultimately, just get things done.
Okay, so the book outlines 11 specific executive skills. And they divide them into two main categories, which I found really helpful. They call them thinking skills and doing skills.
It's a great way to organize them.
Yeah. And I really want us to take our time here and define each of these deeply, rather than just rushing through a list like a textbook. So let's start with the thinking skills. The first one is working memory. Now, how is that different from just, remembering a historical date for a history test?
That's a great question. Working memory is more like your brain's scratch pad.
A scratch pad.
Yeah. It's the ability to hold information in your mind while you are actively performing a complex task. So for Katie, her working memory needs to hold onto the command, clean the room, while she is simultaneously looking at a Barbie doll.
Oh, I see.
But when she looks at the doll, the visual stimulus of the toy overrides the command, and her working memory just drops the ball. It drops the clean the room sticky note.
So it's not that she willfully forgot the rule or didn't care. It's that her brain physically cannot hold the rule and process the distraction at the exact same time.
Precisely. It just gets overwritten.
That makes so much sense. Okay, the second thinking skill is planning and prioritization.
Right. This one is the ability to create a roadmap to reach a goal or to complete a task.
Like figuring out step 1, step 2.
Exactly. It's also about making decisions about what's important to focus on and what's not. If a child has weak planning skills, they might say, start a massive school project the night before it's due.
Oh, we've all been there.
Right. But they do it because they literally couldn't conceptualize the steps needed to get there over a 2-week period.
Which naturally leads right into the third one, which is organization. And I assume this isn't just about having a neat desk, right?
No, it's much, much deeper than that. Organization is the ability to create and maintain systems to keep track of information or materials.
Okay.
So a kid with poor organization might actually sit down and do their homework perfectly.
Right. The intelligence is there.
Exactly. But then they lose it in the bottomless pit of their backpack, and they end up getting a 0 because they couldn't find it to turn it in the next morning.
Oh, man. That is heartbreaking. To do all the work and still fail. Okay. Fourth on the thinking list is time management.
This is a big one. It's the capacity to estimate how much time one has, how to allocate it, and how to stay within time limits and deadlines.
So knowing how long a task actually takes.
Right. Kids with weak time management, they truly believe they can play a video game for just 5 more minutes and still make it to the bus stop on time.
Even when the bus stop is a 10-minute walk away.
Exactly. They suffer from what we call time blindness. They honestly don't feel the passage of time the way others do.
Time blindness. That is such a descriptive term. And the final thinking skill is metacognition, which honestly sounds super academic.
It does, but it's basically just the ability to stand back and take a bird's eye view of yourself in a situation.
Like self-awareness.
Yeah, it is self-monitoring. It's asking yourself, how am I doing right now? Is this strategy I'm using actually working? How is my behavior affecting the people around me?
Okay, so those are the 5 thinking skills. We have working memory, planning, organization, time management, and metacognition.
Correct.
Then we cross over into the behavioral output side, the doing skills. And the first one here is response inhibition.
This is a massive one. Response inhibition is basically your neurological brake pedal.
Your brake pedal.
Yes. It's the capacity to think before you act. So when a child's impulse says, throw the pencil across the room because I'm frustrated, response inhibition is that split-second delay that allows the child to evaluate the consequence and stop themselves.
Wow. And if the brake pedal fails, that leads us directly to the next skill, which is emotional control.
Exactly. Emotional control is the ability to manage your emotions in order to achieve goals, complete tasks, or control and direct your behavior.
So it doesn't mean they aren't allowed to feel angry or sad.
Not at all. It's not about not feeling frustrated. It's about not letting that momentary frustration derail the entire day.
Okay, that makes sense. Next on the doing list is sustained attention.
Right. This is the capacity to maintain focus on a situation or task in spite of distractibility, fatigue, or boredom.
Which is hard even for adults.
It really is. A lot of kids can pay attention to a highly stimulating video game for hours.
Oh, yeah. No problem there.
But sustained attention is what's required to push through a boring math worksheet when their brain is screaming that it would rather be doing anything else.
And getting them to even start that boring worksheet brings us to the next one. Task initiation.
Yes. Task initiation. This is the ability to begin projects without undue procrastination in an efficient or timely fashion.
So it's the starter motor.
Exactly. It's literally the mechanism in the brain that gets you off the couch and moving.
All right, then we have goal-directed persistence.
This is the capacity to have a goal, follow through to the completion of that goal, and not be put off by or distracted by competing interests along the way.
So it's like keeping your eye on the prize.
Exactly. It's remembering the reward at the end of the marathon, even when you're tired in the middle of it.
And finally, the 11th skill, flexibility.
Flexibility is your ability to roll with the punches.
Which kids are famously bad at.
Very bad at. It's the capacity to revise plans in the face of obstacles, setbacks, new information, or mistakes. A child with low flexibility will have an absolute meltdown if it rains on a day they plan to go to the park.
Because they just can't let the park idea go.
Right. Their brain literally cannot pivot to a new indoor plan. It just gets stuck.
Okay, so looking at all 11 of those executive skills, I have to bring in an analogy here because it really helped me visualize all this.
Brief it.
I kept thinking about this whole dynamic like a high-end smartphone. When we talk about a kid being smart, we are talking about their raw intelligence. That is the processor in the phone. And in these kids, the processor is top of the line. It's blazing fast.
State of the art.
Right. You can calculate math equations in a millisecond. It can memorize dinosaur names flawlessly.
Right, so the hardware is exceptional.
But the operating system itself is glitchy. You tap an icon on the screen, and it just freezes. The operating system won't actually launch the apps. And in this analogy, the apps are the executive skills.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter how fast the processor is if the task initiation app keeps crashing every single time you try to open it.
That is a perfect way to look at it. If we view the brain's function as organizing input and organizing output, The input is the intelligence. It's the data being collected.
Okay.
So Katie can easily comprehend the math worksheet, right? The input is completely fine, but the output, the executive function, is what actually allows her to initiate the task of sitting down, to use her working memory, to hold the teacher's instructions in her mind, and to sustain her attention until the worksheet is done.
And without those apps working.
Without those apps launching properly, the brilliant processor is essentially trapped inside a frozen phone.
Which naturally forces us to look at the hardware itself. Because if a kid is born with this blazing fast processor, why aren't the apps just pre-installed?
Right, why don't they just work?
Yeah. We expect a third grader to just, inherently know how to clean a room or manage their time. We constantly treat them like miniature adults. So let's transition into the biology here. What is physically happening in the brain at age 8 that prevents this? Like, how and when do these skills actually develop?
To answer that, we have to recognize that the human brain is quite literally a biological construction project, and it's one that takes a couple of decades to finish.
A couple of decades?
Yeah. It is not fully baked at birth, far from it. At birth, a human brain weighs about 13 ounces, but by the late teenage years, it has ballooned to nearly 3 pounds.
That is a massive amount of physical growth.
It is huge, and that growth is incredibly complex. In early childhood, there's this massive explosion of what we call gray matter. This consists of the neurons and the synapses, the actual physical connections between them.
Now, I read a stat in the source material that the number of synapses in a young child's brain vastly outnumbers what an adult has, which honestly sounds totally counterintuitive to me.
It does, right?
Yeah, you'd think adults would have more connections because, well, we know more things.
It does sound wild, but think of a toddler's brain like a wildly overgrown jungle. There are connections everywhere, going in every direction because they are absorbing absolutely everything in their environment.
Okay, I can picture that.
But having too many connections actually makes the brain highly inefficient. Signals just get lost in the weeds. So after that peak of gray matter, which happens right before age 5, the brain undergoes a massive, aggressive pruning process.
Like weeding a garden.
Exactly like that. The brain is ruthlessly efficient. It looks at the neural connections and says, okay, which of these are we using every day? Keep those. Which ones are we not using? Get rid of them.
Wow.
Yeah. The brain gets rid of the neural pathways that aren't being used, which consolidates mental skills and makes the remaining pathways much, much stronger.
And while the gray matter is acting like a gardener pruning the weeds, the white matter of the brain is stepping up to do a totally different job.
Yes, the white matter.
This is the myelination process, right?
Yeah.
Can you explain how myelin actually works? Because this really blew my mind.
Myelination is fascinating. Myelin is a fatty sheath that literally forms around the axons. And the axons are the long, branch-like structures that carry electrical nerve signals from one cell to another.
So think of it like the rubber insulation around an electrical wire in your house.
That is exactly what it is. If you have a bare copper wire, the electrical signal can leak out, it can spark, or it can just dissipate before it reaches its destination.
Right.
Myelin acts as that rubber insulation. It prevents the electrical signal from leaking out, which makes the communication between nerve cells significantly faster, way more precise, and highly efficient.
So when a kid has an uninsulated neural pathway, the literal electrical thought of, I should go clean my room,
Yeah.
fires off in their brain.
Yeah.
But because the wire lacks myelin, the signal just dissipates halfway there. It just vanishes into thin air.
Exactly. The thought doesn't reach the motor cortex in a strong enough way to actually initiate the physical action.
Okay, so the brain is pruning the gray matter jungle and insulating the white matter wires, making everything faster. But here is the major plot twist from the authors.
The big reveal.
Yeah. This isn't just a slow, steady process from birth all the way to adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
There is a second massive brain growth spurt that happens right around age 11 or 12. And it happens specifically in the frontal lobes.
Yes. Just as a child is hitting middle school, their prefrontal cortex, which is the exact anatomical seat of all 11 of these executive functions we just discussed, is undergoing a chaotic reconstruction phase.
Chaotic is the right word.
The brain actually overproduces gray matter in the frontal lobes again, right before puberty, to prepare for the transition to adulthood.
Wait, hold on. You're telling me that when my middle schooler completely forgets their permission slip for the 5th time, or they melt down because I asked them to just empty the dishwasher, it's not them just being lazy or maliciously rebellious.
Nope.
Because, I'll be honest, it really feels like a lack of discipline. It feels personal.
It always feels personal to the parent. It's so hard not to take it that way. But the biology tells us a completely different story. It is literally because the wiring in their frontal lobe is currently cordoned off with yellow caution tape.
Like a construction zone.
It is a massive construction zone. Because the prefrontal cortex is still under construction and highly inefficient, kids and early teenagers frequently have to rely on other, older parts of the brain to do the heavy lifting.
Like what parts?
Specifically, areas like the amygdala, which is associated with quick fight-or-flight emotional responses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So when you ask them to do a complex multi-step task, their executive center gets overwhelmed and the amygdala just hijacks the whole system. Activating executive skills takes an immense amount of conscious, exhausting effort for them.
So it's deeply physical. It's not a character flaw at all. But, I mean, that raises a massive problem for the listener right now.
Yeah.
If their frontal lobes are basically closed for renovations until they are in their 20s, what are we supposed to do in the meantime? Just let them live in squalor and fail all their classes?
Not at all. The authors describe our role with a really brilliant phrase. They say we have to lend them our frontal lobes.
Lend them our frontal lobes.
Yes. From the time they are infants, parents and educators are literally acting as a surrogate external management system for the child.
I love that.
You put child-proof locks on cabinets because a toddler has absolutely zero response inhibition. You remind a 5-year-old to look both ways before crossing the street because their working memory isn't insulated enough to hold that role reliably.
So we're their executive functioning.
You are. You are providing the structure, the boundaries, and the planning for them until their own internal wiring is insulated and pruned enough to finally take over the job.
That is such a profound way to view parenting. You aren't just nagging them. You are acting as an external hard drive for their developing brain. You are the structural scaffolding holding up the building while the cement dries.
Beautifully said.
But this leads to a huge glaring complication. If I am lending my kid my frontal lobe, what happens if my frontal lobe operates on an entirely different system than theirs?
This is where things get really tense in a house. This brings us to the critical concept of goodness of fit. And if we're being completely honest, a lack of goodness of fit is the source of the most intense daily friction in almost every single household.
I really want to sit with this concept because it felt like a giant light bulb going off for me. Let's look at the case studies the authors provide, starting with Donna and her son, Jim.
Oh, Donna and Jim, a perfect example.
So Donna is a self-described neat freak. Her organization skills are just off the charts. She won't leave a single dish in the sink. Her closets are color-coded. She just thrives on visual order.
Very strong organization app in her brain.
Exactly. But her 14-year-old son, Jim, on the other hand, is what she calls a total slob. So one morning, Donna is frantically searching for her cell phone because Jim borrowed it the night before. She opens his bedroom door. She sees a post-apocalyptic wasteland of clothes, dirty plates, and sports gear all over the floor, and she completely gives up.
She just hits a wall.
Yeah, and she takes it as a personal insult. She can't fathom how he lives like this, and she naturally assumes he's doing it just to disrespect her home.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see that Donna is suffering from a massive blind spot here. She is failing to see that Jim actually compensates for his lack of physical organization with a very, very strong working memory.
Right. If she just took a breath and asked him, he probably knows exactly where that phone is buried under the jeans and the baseball gear.
Exactly. He knows right where it is. But Donna doesn't have that same strong working memory. She relies entirely on external visual organization to function. So because their profiles clash so dramatically, she views his messy room as a deep character flaw rather than just an executive skill mismatch. She thinks, look, I can keep my room clean. Why can't you? You must be lazy.
It's like trying to airdrop a file between an iPhone and an Android.
Good analogy.
The intention is there,
Yeah.
but the operating systems are entirely incompatible, so they just keep throwing error messages at each other. Then there is the case of Mindy and her dad. And honestly, this one stressed me out just reading it.
It's a stressful dynamic.
So 10-year-old Mindy is highly punctual. Her time management is incredible, but her emotional control is very weak. When things go wrong or the schedule changes even a little bit, she panics.
Right.
Her dad is the exact opposite. He is chronically late, always trying to squeeze in one more email or one more errand, but he is highly flexible and emotionally rock solid. So the book paints this picture. Mindy is standing outside her dance class, 25 minutes after it ended. She's pacing back and forth, sobbing, absolutely convinced that her dad has been in a horrific car crash because he isn't there yet.
And when he finally pulls up, holding a coffee, completely relaxed, he just doesn't understand why she's so
She
hysterical.
tells her to calm down and stop being so dramatic.
Which is the absolute worst thing you can say to someone lacking emotional control.
Right.
He views her panic as a ridiculous overreaction because to him, pivoting to a new timeline is effortless. He has high flexibility.
Oh, I see.
And she views his lateness as a terrifying lack of care and safety because, to her, time management is paramount. They stress each other out endlessly because they don't understand that they are operating with completely opposing executive skill strength and weaknesses. He lacks empathy for her anxiety, and she lacks empathy for his time blindness.
We even see this dynamic play out fiercely between siblings, too. There's the example of Jeremy and Jason. Jeremy is 13, highly organized, always initiates his homework right after school, but he melts down easily if he misplaces a single study guide.
High organization, low emotional control.
Exactly. His 11-year-old brother Jason is a total mess. He procrastinates, his backpack is basically a black hole, but Jason is highly creative, endlessly flexible, and emotionally rock solid. Jeremy looks at Jason and thinks he's a lazy loser. Jason looks at Jeremy and thinks he's a neurotic control freak who needs to chill out.
Which highlights exactly why identifying your own strengths and weaknesses as an adult and helping your kids identify theirs is so incredibly vital. The authors introduce a medical concept here called the weak organ theory.
This was fascinating to me. Explain this.
Well, in medicine, it is a known phenomenon that under physical stress, your weakest organ is the first one to show symptoms. If you have a weak respiratory system, a minor cold suddenly turns into bronchitis.
Right.
The same theory applies perfectly to the brain and to executive skills. Under stress, whether it's fatigue from a long day, hunger, or just an overloaded schedule, our weakest executive skill is always the first one to break down.
So if your weak skill is emotional control, a really stressful day at work means you are snapping at your kids the literal second you walk through the front door.
Precisely. Your brake pedal fails first. And if you recognize that you and your child actually share a weakness, let's say you are both terrible at time management, you can stop judging them for it.
You can have some grace.
Yes. You can stop yelling at them to hurry up and instead bond over it. You can say, look, we both struggle to get out the door on time in the morning. We both hate rushing. Let's figure out a system together so we stop stressing each other out.
But if you have opposite profiles, like Mindy and her dad, you have to consciously deploy radical empathy. You have to realize that what is effortless for you might feel like climbing Mount Everest for them. And here's where it gets really interesting. If you are listening to this, I want you to think about your own childhood for a second. Think about the specific things your parents constantly harped on you for.
This is a great exercise.
Were they always on you to clean your room, to hurry up, to stop being so sensitive, to sit still? There is a very, very high probability that the things they punished you for were simply areas where your executive skills didn't naturally match theirs. They were projecting their strengths onto your developing weaknesses.
That's a huge realization for a lot of people.
It is. Recognizing that completely changes how you view your own upbringing, doesn't it?
It really does. It replaces moral judgment with a mechanical, compassionate understanding of behavior.
Exactly. It removes the shame. So, now that we understand the mechanics of the brain, and we know we need to assess our goodness of fit, how do we actually fix the daily struggles? We can't just say, well, my kid has bad working memory. I guess we will live in chaos for the next 10 years.
Right. That's not a solution.
The book introduces a very practical framework.
Yeah.
The ABC model, antecedent, behavior, and consequence. Let's start with A, changing the antecedent. What does that actually mean in practice?
Changing the antecedent basically means changing the environment. And this is a crucial, non-negotiable principle in the book. You must change the environment before you try to change the child.
I can hear a lot of parents pushing back on that, though. They might say, wait, isn't that just helicopter parenting? Aren't we just coddling them and removing all adversity so they never learn to cope?
It's a very valid concern, but it misunderstands the goal here. Changing the environment isn't about doing the work for them. It's about building a wheelchair ramp instead of forcing them to carry a wheelchair up the stairs.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
When a child is failing at a task, adults almost always assume it's a won't-do situation, meaning the child is perfectly capable, but they are just being stubborn or lazy.
Right, like he won't do his homework.
But you first have to objectively assess if it's actually a can't-do situation. Is the current environment making it neurologically impossible for their specific level of executive functioning to succeed?
How do you even tell the difference?
Mostly through observation. If a child with severe ADHD can't initiate their homework in their bedroom, you have to look at the environment. Their bedroom is full of toys, a computer, a bed.
It's a highly distracting space.
Exactly. The environment demands high sustained attention and high response inhibition to ignore all those toys. If they simply don't have those skills yet, it's a can't do. So you change the antecedent by moving homework to the start kitchen table where you can sit nearby. You've removed the invisible barriers.
Because you aren't doing the math for them. You are just modifying the environment so their brain can actually focus on the math.
Right.
Or changing the social environment, right. If you have a kid who gets easily overstimulated and has massive meltdowns at huge Chuck E. Cheese birthday parties, you change the antecedent. You don't force them to go and scream at them to behave. You only throw them small, quiet parties with 2 or 3 close friends.
Exactly. Let's look at the story of Carmen from the book. She is 10 years old. She is very shy, and she lacks flexibility and emotional control in open-ended, unpredictable social situations.
Okay.
So her Girl Scout troop leader asks her to announce a raffle in front of a crowded nursing home. Carmen doesn't explicitly say no to the adult, but her mom notices she gets very withdrawn, quiet, and she starts complaining of a stomach ache.
Which is a classic physical manifestation of anxiety over an executive skill deficit. Her brain is basically sounding an alarm that she doesn't have the tools for this job.
Right. Now, her mother knows that public speaking taxes all of Carmen's weakest skills. It requires high emotional control, working memory to remember the script, and flexibility to deal with the crowd.
So what does mom do?
Well, instead of forcing Carmen to do it and watching her suffer a humiliating public meltdown which teaches her nothing or letting her completely quit the event and feel like a failure, the mother alters the environment.
Yeah.
She knows Carmen is a fantastic, confident piano player, so she goes to the troop leader and asks if Carmen can sit in the corner and play background piano music during the raffle instead.
It's absolutely brilliant. Carmen still participates. She still gets the self-esteem win of contributing to the troop, but she's using a task that aligns perfectly with her executive strengths rather than triggering her weakest skills. You've changed the environment so she can succeed.
Yes.
Another great example of this is Roger. He's 10 years old, and he passionately hates writing. I mean, he throws pencils, he screams, he completely loses his mind at the kitchen table over a simple one-page writing assignment. And the mother is incredibly confused because the teacher says he's perfectly fine at school.
This is a classic mismatch. Roger's underlying problem is that the mechanical, physical act of writing taxes his very weak sustained attention and his weak flexibility. At school, the highly structured environment, the rigid schedule, and the peer pressure all act as external scaffolding that holds him together.
But at home?
At home, that scaffolding is gone, and he falls apart.
So how do you change the antecedent for Roger?
You modify the task itself. If the educational goal is for him to express his ideas and practice narrative structure, the physical act of writing with a pencil is an unnecessary barrier for him right now.
Oh, I see.
Maybe you let him dictate his thoughts out loud while the parent types them on a laptop. Or you negotiate with the teacher to reduce the requirement from 3 paragraphs down to 1 highly focused paragraph. You lower the barrier to entry.
Then there's 4-year-old Jonas, who is just a powder keg of meltdowns. He hates tags on his clothes. He refuses to eat certain textures. He falls apart at loud family parties.
Just constantly overwhelmed.
Right. His parents realize that they can't sit a 4-year-old down and teach him a masterclass on emotional control. His frontal lobes aren't there yet. So they change his environment entirely. They implement strict wake and sleep routines so he's never fatigued. They cut out highly stimulating or violent cartoons. They proactively leave family parties early before the chaos peaks and he gets overstimulated. And almost immediately, the meltdowns drastically decrease.
Because they remove the environmental triggers that were constantly overloading his developing system.
It reminded me of playing a video game.
How so?
Well, if you start a brand new game on hard mode, before you've even learned what buttons to push, you are going to die every 2 seconds, get super frustrated, and throw the controller at the TV. You'll never learn how to play. Modifying the environment is simply bumping the difficulty down to story mode. It slows everything down so the child can actually learn the mechanics of the game in a safe space.
That's a great analogy. To quantify that, the authors use what they call the 1 to 10 effort scale.
Okay, how does that work?
If a task feels like a 10 on the effort scale for a child, like asking a highly disorganized teenager to go clean the entire garage they're going to balk, it feels completely insurmountable to their working memory and planning skills. The goal of modifying the environment is to ask yourself, how do we make this a 3?
So instead of go clean the garage, which requires massive planning and prioritization, it's go sweep the garage floor for exactly 10 minutes, and then you can stop.
Exactly. You reduce the effort required to a level that they can successfully initiate and sustain. Over time, as their skills grow and their myelin thickens, you can slowly bump the difficulty back up.
But here's the reality check, right? We can't alter the environment forever. We can't just dictate their essays until they are in college. Eventually, they're going to have to do the hard things on their own.
That is the ultimate goal.
So the A in the ABC model was antecedent, but now we have to move on to the B for behavior and the C for consequence. How do we actually teach them these skills directly so they can function independently?
This is where we transition from changing the environment to providing direct instruction and scaffolding. The authors lay out 10 principles of instruction, and the very first one is arguably the most important. Teach the skill directly. Do not expect them to learn it by osmosis.
Which is a huge trap we all fall into.
We do. We often assume that if a kid watches us clean the kitchen or organize a calendar, they will intuitively pick up on the underlying skills. But for a scattered kid, that is invisible magic. You have to break the skill down into explicit, concrete steps.
You also have to move from external to internal, which goes back to lending your frontal lobe. You provide the external structure, the lists, the alarms, until they internalize the process. And a massive foundational part of this structure is what the authors call Grandma's Law.
Grandma's Law is brilliant in its simplicity. It states you have to do the have to before you get the want to.
You have to eat your vegetables before you get the chocolate chip cookies.
Right. It creates a natural, unavoidable consequence and incentive structure. If you want video game time, you must first complete the homework. There is no negotiating. There is no, I'll do it later. It builds a neural pathway that associates task initiation with a positive reward.
Another core principle they emphasize is providing just enough support for success, and then fading that support gradually. Let's look at 8-year-old Noriko from the book.
This is a really practical example.
Every morning in Noriko's house is an absolute battleground. She dawdles, she stares at the TV, she plays with the dog, she forgets her shoes. Her mom feels like a broken record, constantly yelling, "Get your shoes, brush your teeth, we are going to be late."
We've all been there.
So the mom decides to intervene. They sit down and collaboratively create a visual checklist.
The collaboration is the key variable there. The mother didn't just print out a generic chart from the internet and tape it to the fridge. They made it together, which builds buy-in from the kid.
Right. Noriko was highly visual and loves art, so she drew little pictures for each step of her morning. A picture of clothes for getting dressed, a toothbrush, a backpack. They put Velcro on the back of all the pictures and made a big poster board with a to do column on the left and a done column on the right.
Very tactile.
Yeah. And the new rule was this. Mom completely stops nagging. No more yelling. She just points silently to the board. If Noriko moves all her pictures to the done column and has 15 minutes to spare before the bus arrives, she gets to watch cartoons.
The cartoons are Grandma's Law. It's the consequence, the incentive. And by pointing silently to the board instead of yelling instructions, the mother is providing just enough support.
Right.
She is acting as an external visual cue, but Noriko is doing the actual cognitive work of executing the task.
This raises an important question, though. How do we talk to kids while we're trying to teach them these skills? Because I know I default to just barking orders when I'm in a rush. Put your shoes on right now.
That is exactly where a technique called verbal scaffolding comes in. The universal rule of thumb here is ask, don't tell.
Ask, don't tell.
Yes. Instead of dictating commands, which allows the child's brain to stay completely passive, you ask questions that guide their thinking. Instead of saying, put your bike in the garage because I said so, you pause and ask, what do you think will happen to your bike if you leave it out in the rain overnight?
And the kid has to think. And they say, well, it'll get wet and the chain will get rusty.
Exactly. By explaining why and forcing them to articulate the cause and effect, you are actively building their working memory and their metacognition.
Oh, that's so smart.
You are forcing their brain to retrieve the information, synthesize it, and understand the consequence rather than just blindly obeying an authoritative order. Over time, those synapses strengthen.
It reminds me exactly of teaching a kid to ride a bike. When you teach a kid to ride, you don't hold the seat forever, because they will never learn to balance. But you also don't just shove them down a steep hill on day one and say, figure it out.
No, that would end badly.
You hold on to the seat, you run alongside them sweating, you let go for 2 seconds to see if they can hold the balance, and you immediately grab the seat again when they wobble. That is exactly how we build executive skills. We provide the scaffolding, and we slowly, deliberately fade it out as they find their balance.
And that fading process is critical. If you just drop the visual checklist entirely after one successful week, the child will likely crash and burn. You have to fade the prompts gradually.
How so?
Maybe you move from pointing at the board to just asking from the other room, have you checked your board today? Until eventually, weeks or months later, they do it entirely on their own.
So what does this all mean? If we step back and look at this entire deep dive, the main takeaway is that intelligence is really just the raw material. It's the processing chip. But executive skills are the actual tools, the software apps, that build a successful independent life. When we have a kid who is smart but scattered, they aren't trying to drive us crazy. They aren't trying to be disrespectful. They are literally operating a massive biological construction zone in their prefrontal cortex.
And our job as the adults in the room is to lend them our frontal lobes until theirs are ready to bear the weight.
Yeah.
By understanding the goodness of fit between our profiles and theirs, by deliberately altering the environment to remove impossible barriers, and by directly teaching and scaffolding these skills through visual checklists and verbal prompts, we can guide them to their full potential.
We can actually help them grow without breaking their spirit and without spending every morning locked in a screaming match. But before we wrap up today, I know you had a final thought that really takes this whole concept in a fascinating, unexpected new direction.
I do. We've spent this entire time talking about children because obviously that is the focus of the source material. We know that the brain's gray matter and frontal lobes undergo massive pruning and development up until our early 20s.
Right.
But considering modern discoveries in neuroplasticity, which is the brain's incredible ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout our entire lifespan, it makes you wonder.
Wonder what?
How might we, as fully grown adults, use these exact same childhood scaffolding techniques to rewire our own adult executive dysfunction?
Oh, wow. That is a completely different way to look at it.
Think about it. When you face a massive career change, or a deeply overwhelming new project at work, or the absolute sleepless chaos of becoming a new parent, what happens?
It fell apart.
Your own executive skills can completely break down under the stress. You lose your keys, you forget appointments, you lose your emotional control and snap at your partner. Under stress, your weakest organ fails.
That is so true.
So what if we applied the 1 to 10 effort scale to our own taxes? What if we built a Velcro visual checklist for our own morning routines when we are feeling paralyzed by adult burnout? We view these tools, the checklist, the environmental modifications, the fading scaffolding as training wheels for kids. But maybe they aren't just for kids. Maybe they are simply the fundamental operating manuals for the human brain, no matter what age we are.
That is incredible. It brings so much self-compassion to our own struggles. So the next time you are staring at a completely messy room, whether it's your third grader's bedroom with the Barbies or your own chaotic home office, remember that the equation isn't broken. You aren't lazy, and neither are they. You just might need to upgrade the operating system, lower the effort scale to a 3, and build a little scaffolding. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take these tools, check your own goodness of fit, give yourself and the kids in your life a little grace, and we will see you next time as we unpack another stack of sources.